There is a particular kind of pain that comes from loving deeply and losing anyway. Not because you didn't try, not because you didn't care, but because love, sometimes, is not enough to make someone stay. When a heart has given sincerely, time, effort, loyalty, it does not break loudly. It breaks quietly, in private moments, in memories that replay without permission, in the silence after the last message. You may have told yourself you were strong. You may have said you understood. But underneath understanding, there was hurt. A question that lingered. If I gave my best, why did it still end? And in the space that follows loss, many people wait. Not always for the person to return, but for balance, for meaning, for something that feels like justice. Some call it karma. Not as revenge, not as punishment, but as a quiet restoration of emotional equilibrium. Because when you loved honestly and still lost, it can feel unfair. And the heart longs to believe that fairness still exists somewhere in the unfolding of time. People who loved deeply and lost often carry their pain inward. They often replay the relationship in fragments. You may notice how they revisit conversations, how they analyze what they could have done differently. Without realizing it, they take responsibility for things that were never fully theirs. They wonder if they were too much, too emotional, too available, or perhaps not enough, not attractive enough, not interesting enough. They often oscillate between longing and resentment, missing the connection while also recognizing its flaws. They may check social media more than they admit, not because they want to, but because unfinished stories create tension. They want to know if the other person is thriving, if they regret leaving, if they feel even a fraction of the loss. They often imagine a moment in the future, a moment when the person realizes what they gave up, not out of cruelty, but out of validation. Because if the other person eventually understands your worth, then the pain feels less meaningless. Without realizing it, many people equate karma with acknowledgement. They want the universe to confirm that their love mattered, that their sincerity was not wasted. This desire does not begin with the breakup. It often begins much earlier. In childhood, love may have felt uncertain. Affection may have been inconsistent. Warmth followed by withdrawal. Approval given and then withheld. A child in that environment learns something subtle. They learn to work for connection, to prove their worth, to hold on tightly when attention fades. If early love required effort, adult love often carries that imprint. When someone leaves, it does not only feel like loss. It feels like failure. It feels like repeating something familiar. Like once again, not being chosen fully. The nervous system remembers the instability. It does not distinguish clearly between past and present. So the pain of adult loss becomes layered. It carries echoes of childhood confusion. Moments when affection disappeared without explanation. Moments when love felt conditional. And in those moments, the idea of karma becomes comforting. Because karma suggests order. It suggests that actions have consequences. That what was unbalanced will rebalance. That what was taken lightly will eventually be understood. But karma is not always dramatic. It does not always arrive as regret in the other person. Sometimes it arrives as growth in you. After loss, something shifts quietly. You become more observant. You notice patterns you once overlooked. You begin to see where you compromised too much, where you silenced discomfort, where you accepted less than what you felt you deserved. You may notice that your tolerance decreases, not in bitterness, but in clarity. You stop romanticizing inconsistency. You stop excusing emotional distance. Without realizing it, you are recalibrating. The heart that loved deeply does not become hardened. It becomes wiser. And that wisdom is a form of healing. Even if it does not look like the kind of karma you once imagined. In adulthood, loving and losing shapes identity. At first, it may shrink you. You may withdraw, doubt your instincts, second-guess your choices. There is often a period of contraction, where trust feels fragile, where vulnerability feels risky. You may find yourself more guarded, less eager to open fully. But beneath beneath the guardedness, something else grows. Discernment. You become more aware of reciprocity, of effort, of emotional availability. You notice when someone leans in and when they lean out. You no longer confuse intensity with intimacy. And slowly, you begin to value your own emotional investment more carefully. This is not revenge. It is restoration. Because when you loved and lost, part of the healing is reclaiming your energy. No longer giving it blindly. No longer attaching it to someone unwilling to hold it responsibly. The other person may or may not face consequences. They may repeat patterns. They may move on quickly. But karma is not always about visible suffering. It is often about internal consequence. People who leave sincerely loving partners sometimes carry quiet awareness later. They may compare future connections. They may sense the absence of something stable. They may recognize too late what they once had. But even if they never articulate it, their growth, or lack of it, unfolds in its own way. You do not need to witness it for it to exist. There is an inner conflict in the heart that loved deeply. Part of you wants them to feel what you felt, to experience the ache, the emptiness, the quiet nights. Another part of you does not want to become resentful. You do not want your love to transform into bitterness. So you sit between two impulses, justice and peace, validation and detachment. You may tell yourself you are over it, that you have moved on, but certain memories still sting. Certain songs still carry weight. Certain dates still feel heavier. Healing is not linear. It unfolds in layers. Some days you feel free. Other days you feel the pull of what was. But gradually, the emotional charge softens. Not because you forced it, but because time integrates what once felt unbearable. Karma, in its quietest form, is this integration. It is the gradual understanding that your love was not wasted, even if it was not returned fully. Because loving sincerely shapes you. It expands your capacity. It reveals your depth. And depth is not something that disappears with loss. You might begin to notice that the pain no longer defines you. It becomes part of your story, not the whole of it. You may look back and see the relationship more clearly, both its beauty and its imbalance. You may recognize that you stayed longer than you should have, or that you ignored signals you sensed early. And instead of shame, there is learning. That learning becomes protective, not rigid, just aware. You trust your intuition more now. You do not dismiss subtle discomfort. You understand that love is not proven by endurance alone. And in this understanding, something settles. You are no longer waiting for external justice. You are experiencing internal alignment. That is karma too, not as cosmic punishment, but as psychological equilibrium. The heart that loved deeply and lost is not weaker. It is refined, more attuned to authenticity, less tolerant of half-presence, more committed to mutual effort. There is still longing sometimes. Healing does not erase memory. You may still wonder if they think of you, if they miss you, if they ever fully grasped what you offered. But that curiosity becomes softer. It does not control your days. It does not dictate your worth. Because worth is no longer tied to their recognition. You begin to see that loving sincerely was never a mistake. Even if the outcome hurt, the mistake would have been hardening entirely, closing off permanently, refusing to love again. But you did not become closed. You became careful. And careful is not cold. It is conscious. The quiet miracle of karma is not watching someone else struggle. It is realizing you survived. That your heart, though bruised, still beats with depth. Still desires connection. Still believes in meaning. And that belief is powerful. When you loved and lost, you may have thought something was taken from you. But with time, you see that something was also given. Clarity, boundaries, self-awareness. You no longer romanticize potential. You seek consistency. You no longer chase validation. You seek mutual investment. That shift does not always feel dramatic, but it changes the quality of your future connections. You become less reactive, less desperate for reassurance, more stable within yourself. And stability attracts differently. You are no longer asking the universe for proof that you mattered. You are living as if you do. Because you understand something now. Love offered sincerely is never wasted. Even if it was misplaced. It reveals your capacity, your courage, your willingness to risk vulnerability. And those qualities are rare. Karma does not erase pain. It transforms it. It turns heartbreak into awareness, longing into discernment, loss into growth. And growth is often the quiet justice we did not initially recognize. The heart that loved and lost is not waiting anymore. Not for apology. Not for regret. Not for cosmic retribution. It is moving. Slowly. Steadily. Forward. It carries the memory, but not the desperation. It carries the lesson, but not the bitterness. And perhaps that is the deepest healing. Not that they come back. Not that they suffer. But that you stand differently. You love differently. You choose differently. You trust differently. And one day, when someone meets you with the same sincerity you once offered so freely, you will understand. Karma was not about watching them realize your worth. It was about you realizing it first. And once you do, the balance restores itself. Not loudly, not dramatically, but gently, like a heart that finally understands. It was never broken beyond repair. It was simply being reshaped into something wiser. And that quiet reshaping is healing.